Brent, are we good to go?
It's just taking a second, just a moment. And all set.
All right, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the Pathroot live stream. This is our series, The Family Guide to Addiction. I'm Carolyn, and I'm really pleased today to be joined by Missy and Michael. They run a wonderful organization in Marietta, Georgia called Davis Direction Foundation. And today we're going to be talking about the power of community. That's our theme for today. So rather than introduce Missy and Michael, myself, I'll just turn it over to you guys, Missy. Y'all can share who you are, why you're, what was the inspiration behind Davis Direction, and a little bit about yourselves.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. We are delighted to be here today to share our story for others so that they can know the power in putting tragedy to something good. And that's basically why we're here today. In 2014, we lost our oldest son, Davis, to a heroin addiction. He died of an overdose. And at that time, we didn't really understand what we were supposed to do. And we just prayed about it. And God finally told us after a year that what we were supposed to do was make a safe place for people who struggled with addiction issues so that they would have a place to network, a place to share, receive support and resources, and just obviously a place to come together and feel safe and valued. So that's what we did with the Zone here in Marietta, Georgia. The Davis Direction Foundation is an overall umbrella that has several components to it, but the component that was started first was the Zone, and it was a place for people to come and get resources and support when they were struggling with addiction or struggling to stay in recovery. So you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Michael Owen, and I'll sort of round out the story for you a little from a father's perspective. Missy said it best. We didn't really understand what the disease of addiction was and what we needed to do. So we probably made about every mistake in the book under the name of being a responsible parent. And that could be a very long, deep conversation, but it was a journey that I would absolutely wish upon no one, because for me at the time, addiction was, a pretty simple concept. Just don't do it. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. And you find out very quickly as you're dealing with someone that you love in addiction. But both of us had full-time careers. My wife was finishing up her career as an educator here in Cobb County. I worked 27 years in big corporate jobs and high-level finance capacities and such at the time of this addiction. So going back to the power of the community, as we were nearing the end of our son's journey with addiction before he passed, overdosed, he had gotten out of rehab. We put him into rehab. He lasted there for probably about 3 weeks. A lot of things dealing with insurance because they want you in and out, and addiction is not something that you can cure overnight like that. So it becomes a little bit of a struggle in terms of where you turn for help. So once he was out of rehab, me being a naive father, I'm like, wow, I got my son back. He looks great. He's gained 20 pounds. Off to work, back to normal. Son, nowhere to go, no job. Obviously being out of college too. So idleness is not a very good thing with no one around when you're early in the stages of recovery. So that was something that a void that we felt and we needed to correct. So as we devised what a support system would look like, my wife had retired from Cobb County, and she decided to go meet with people that were addicted to gain their insights and knowledge. And that was actually the foundation of everything that we do here. It was not something that she designed, something I designed. It came directly from people that were in recovery. Some of them had just come into recovery, being fresh off of addiction. And the power of what they brought together is a testament to how this organization today operates, to be quite honest. I stayed on and worked in my corporate job for quite a few years more while this place got stood up, and then eventually it got to where it was just too much over here to handle. And I ended up being very fortunate to exit at the proper time from my corporate job and come over and be the full-time CFO, and quickly found out how difficult it is running a nonprofit. It was probably about 10 to 15 times harder than my corporate job. I thought my corporate job was stressful. Nonprofits are extremely stressful to try to maintain your services that you provide that are basically free of charge. But I've learned a lot being here, learned a lot about addiction, learned a lot about the people that are trying to get their lives back together. And we do go around and tell a lot of different stories. I think at a high level, to get maybe prime the conversation even more, to me, the power of community cannot be underestimated. And here's why. If you think back, and trust me, I'm not like, I cannot recite stuff verse for verse out of any type of Bible or anything, but there is a story in the New Testament about Christ when he returned back to his hometown, and he got no respect in terms of his preachings. And he finally he told his disciples, we need to get up and go. That's analogous to somewhat what happens with families and the person in addiction. Families are not always the best people to provide a person's support in their journey to recovery. And that's difficult for some people to get their heads around. I completely get it and understand it, because when I was a father, I tried everything in the book. I tried good dad, I tried bad dad, I tried middle of the road. I was trying everything to break through to get to my son, to have him open up and be helpful with what he was going through, because I'm sure he was in a state of being in over his head, feeling shame within the family. And it was just something that he didn't want to talk about and wanted to continuously hide. And I knew that was a bad recipe, because you got to be able to talk. But sometimes family members are not the best ones to provide that, because we constantly, as family members, can quickly remind other people who they were and what they did and how bad it was for everyone. So here, this place provides what I like to call, and I hear it every single day at this organization, is this is my family. There's people that have had relapses many times, and they've had to either spend more time in jail, more time locked away. Maybe they spent time on the streets, and ultimately, when they get themselves strong and back together and they need help, they come here and they say, I'm glad to be back home, because they have a support system here of people that are very forgiving, people that are looking forward and not in the rearview mirror, and providing all the resources that you could think of that you would need each and every day. We are not a night shelter. We like to think of ourselves, it's more of like a day type shelter for the journey of recovery, which includes a lot of things, even down to basic necessities like clothing and food. We serve over 3,000 something meals a month. We provide clothing to people that need them, but there are requirements. You have to go through a vetting process when you walk through the door. Missy can tell you a little bit more about the stats on program services here. But to me, the power of community is exactly what we provide here. And the testament is in the people themselves, and the fact that they constantly come here to maintain their sobriety.
Yeah, I want to get back to Davis for a second, because what you said, I think needs to be highlighted. And I think what you said about Davis was like, he didn't know where to go and he was ashamed or he was embarrassed. Because Missy, maybe you can share this. Davis was not the kind of kid that you thought would have been an addict. Wasn't he a very high performer athlete? Talk a little bit about Davis before, and why going back and creating a community from the friends he had before would have been harder for him than maybe for somebody else.
Sure. Davis was always a high achiever. He was in the gifted program all through Cobb County. And he got involved in student government in 5th grade. He was the treasurer of the whole school. And then as he went to middle school, he stayed involved in student government. And as a freshman in high school, he was a part of the student government. As sophomore in high school, he was very heavily involved. And then as a junior, he became class president for his entire class at Kennesaw Mountain High School, which was at that time one of the biggest high schools in Cobb County. And then as a senior, he was the senior class president as well. He gave the speech, the commencement speech, in front of thousands of people at KSU Convocation Center for graduation. He was an East Cobb baseball player. He was National Honor Society. He was nominated for Mr. KMHS. He was in the Hall of Fame at Kennesaw Mountain High School. He was everything, and everybody loved him. He was somebody who could brighten up your day, and he took great joy in helping people, especially people in the special ed program, which the Kennesaw Mountain High School is known for helping others and putting on special services events and things. But he was very well liked. He was always a happy kid, and he just lost his way. He lost his way. He had an accident on Thanksgiving night. One Thanksgiving, I guess he was 16 years old, and he was going to see his girlfriend after we'd gotten home from our Thanksgiving meal. And he was going down the street, and a car pulled out right in front of him. He got whiplash, was put on opioids from that accident. And I think that's where he found out how good they made him feel. I don't think that's where his addiction started, but I think that's where he found out how good opioids made him feel, because he had that genetic predisposition to
Right.
become addicted. So after that, he went through some real hard changes and some hard things between high school and college, and went to the medicine cabinet to find a way to help somebody sleep. And we really don't have problems sleeping at our house, so we didn't have any sleep aids. And because of that, he found some expired opioids that said may cause drowsiness, and he started taking them. And they, opioids don't really lose their potency over time. That's an FDA thing that expires them, and they really don't expire. So he started taking them, and by the time he had finished all the opioids from probably my C-sections and things like that were probably 10 years old, he had become a full-blown opioid addict. And like Michael said, we didn't really understand what that meant. And it was so different from any addiction that we had ever really known. So when Michael says we didn't know what we were dealing with, we didn't. And back in 2014, nobody in rehabilitation knew to pull you aside and say, no, you don't understand. This addiction is different from smoking pot or alcohol or whatever. This addiction happens fast, and the withdrawal is like nothing you can imagine. And when you're going through it, you realize that in 7 seconds, you can be back to feeling like you're floating on a cloud again. And it's just different. But when we started, we honestly spent a year educating ourselves about what opioid addiction was and why it happens. And so when we started the Davis Direction Foundation and the Zone, we knew that for us to get any support in this field, we had to educate our community, not people who were going through it, but we had to educate our community, because most communities think that addiction is a choice, and people go out and they become addicted on purpose, and they think that there are people crawling out from under bridges and homeless and bearded and dirty and all those things. And it's such a misconception. We had to educate our community. And when we started doing symposiums in the community, and we started doing open houses and things like that, we helped people understand what addiction was. And we tried to really address the stigma of addiction, because as many people as were getting addicted because of mental health or self-medicating or whatever, doctors were still very heavily prescribing opioid medication that was being taken and creating addiction. And so that was one of the things that was really standing in our way. So we educated our community first before we could really get the help that we needed. And Carolyn, as you know, we just celebrated our first decade of serving in our community with the Davis Direction Foundation. And it honestly took us a decade to get to a point where we feel like our community knows and understands addiction and accepts the fact that it really is a genetic thing as much as it could be a choice at one point, but your brain becomes hijacked and then the choice is taken away. And as you know, COVID created so much mental health, and now people are self-medicating, trying to get their mental health in order, and many times they turn to opioids to get that done. So as where we were making really good strides coming into 2018, 2019, 2020 kicked us to the curb and took us back years. So
Yeah,
we're fighting out of that.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, Davis is a perfect example of what I would call a golden child, like somebody you would never have expected. And it also points out exactly what you said, that there are, people that have the predisposition and genetic predisposition to become addicted because their brains are not yet fully developed. Davis just happened to be caught up in that scenario. So, Michael, you said that when he went to rehab, he came out after 3 weeks, and you thought, all right, all good, he's fixed, and that he struggled after that to find community or to figure out what to do with himself. What was the struggle for him? Why was creating community harder back then than maybe it is today?
I don't think we really had enough ideas of the fragmented type support systems that were out in the community. This place, you can walk into this place under the influence, either by yourself, with a family member, friend, or whatever, and we're going to get you to where you need to be. It might not be in this state, might not be in this city, but we'll get you to where you need to be and tell you all the resources that are available to you. We didn't really have those kind of conversations as he was coming out of the rehab facility. So it was, without understanding addiction, I think what summed it up best for me, let me back up. So the month that he passed was the same month that the famous actor Philip Seymour Hoffman died. Yep. Philip Seymour Hoffman had traveled down to Atlanta, to the Bluff, and had purchased a bunch of opiates and had flown back home to New York, where he passed overdosed. And his doctor had written an article, and one of the things that the doctor said was what really opened my eyes for me to start digging deeper into medical journals and research. And he said, here's what you don't understand about the disease of addiction as it relates to somebody that's predisposed for this type of disease, and Philip's disease of using opiates is, even when Philip gets clean, he's going to have to do push-ups every hour of every day for the rest of his life to stay clean. I get that. I'm a workout buff, so I understand mentally what that would look, physically what that would take. And furthermore, led me to another, simple quote from, I think it was Mark Twain, who said, you know what, quitting tobacco is easy. I've done it 1,000 times. So, you don't have 1,000 times when it comes to opiates and heroin and fentanyl. The next one may be your last. So it really opened my eyes, like I said, to do further research into that. And if at the time, Missy, we both have our own, maybe understanding or reasoning as to where I'll call it where his journey began, To me, his journey began the day that doctor wrote the prescriptions. I think it was oxycodones. I don't know what that is. I mean, at the time, I had, and I still have reverence for the medical community and doctors, but no longer just blind to it, staying quiet, being a figure that you can't, question or touch or anything like that. I quickly went through that journey over the years and understood that no, it's our health. We're ultimately the ones that have to take care of it. So if the doctors had said, "Oh, this is what this kind of drug does, and by the way, I'm going to give you a prescription of Narcan," at which point I've been like, "What's that?" Well, if there's an overdose and the person stops breathing and they're about to die, this is what you're going to do. Maybe some light bulbs would have gone off to say, man, I don't know what these drugs are. Maybe I need to do some research. Do I really want my son taking this kind of stuff? So lots of, it's not misinformation. It's knowledge gaps, right? There's knowledge gaps. I had no reason to seek those out. So if I could do something differently going back in time, that's what it would have been. So getting back to your original question, I think that the quote by Mark Twain probably hits home more than anything, because there's a time frame that nobody can quantify in the journey of recovery. And the articles I read, I like to call it PAWS, PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndromes. And it takes time for the brain to heal and get back to functioning. It could be 9 months, it could be 18 months. But that education to me needs to be coupled with the journey of recovery to have somebody understand is that, look, you've gotten clean, but you've not necessarily recovered, because it's going to take a while for your brain to fully heal. Because during that healing time, I've got to imagine, I've not gone through it, but I've got to imagine that the urges are very erratic and sometimes strong. And I don't know what that looks like and can't predict them. So to me, that's what he was succumbing to in the idleness of being at home with nothing to do, because he was a what'd you say? He's like a type A personality. Everything was, full bore at all times. Very, sort of high strung with his personality. Go, 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 go. So I've got to imagine that a lot of downtime and idleness, was not healthy for him. And had he had a place like this to come to every single day until he was able to get back into employment, get back into school, get back on some type of career path. That's what I see plenty of people up here doing every single day of the week. And that's why they're here. They're staying out of trouble and in a sober and safe, supportive environment.
Yeah, one thing that you said earlier in the conversation, I'd like to drill back down on, which is family does not necessarily make the best community or support community. But having said that, statistics will tell you that 90%, I think it's a huge number, live with a family member, spouse, family, whatever. Yeah. So you're pointing out the need to do what you did after Davis passed, which is to educate yourself about your role in community, because you can't really extract yourself from it if the person's living with you. So I think that's another kind of takeaway here, is that we need to understand what the disease is, what the person's going through, so we're not negatively impacting part of the community around them. We're not that negative influence there. So if someone is not living in Marietta, Georgia, and they want to find a way to put community around them, what are some options that they have? What can they do to go find people that will support them, that are like-minded, that understand and are positive to their recovery plan and process? How can they do that?
One of the ways they can do it, Carolyn, is to build a network. And I have never seen a person stay sober that doesn't have a network. it's easy to build a network here, but like you said, not everybody's in Marietta, Georgia. So I know that in a lot of other places, people will meet at meetings, AA meetings, NA meetings, any kind of meetings. And granted, they're only once a week or whatever for the most part for those meetings. But what they do is afterward, they form a network. They often go out to eat together. They go and do things on the weekend together. Find a place where people are hiking, doing outdoor events, doing things together and sober. And that's what the model of the zone is. We just provide the place to do it and all the support and resources that you need. But the most important thing is building that network of support. And, you know, it can include your family, but also a lot of times family members can be toxic.
Right.
Especially, you know, only 1 in 10 people have the genetic predisposition to become addicted. So that's 9 people in your family who can go out and have a beer, or who can go out and drink socially and come home and not become addicted. But that could be a trigger for somebody who is in addiction. So when you build that network, you build that network of sober people. And those are the people that you reach out to when you're struggling or when you've been triggered. And those are the people that will help you because they know where you've been.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I believe you said that Davis really struggled when he entered college, right? That he was speaking, you know, he addressed at his high school graduation, he was still performing well in high school.
He was not addicted in high school. His addiction came between high school and college.
High school and college. So let me also make a recommendation to people that are listening, if they don't know about it. On 150 campuses across the United States, there are formalized collegiate recovery programs. And this is an incredibly good community support where you've got people that are going to college. Maybe they've been incarcerated, maybe they're a little older, but they get other support services, counseling, schedule preference to work around their school schedule. For example, in Atlanta, Kennesaw State University has a Center for Youth and Addiction and Recovery. Alabama's got a program. Ohio State has a program. And statistics will tell you that the graduation rate for people that come into these kind of programs is in excess of 95%. And it's also a pretty strong testament to people that are able to stay in recovery, stay sober. So that's one suggestion. So you've given a suggestion of go to AA or NA, meet the people that are there. And then if you're college age, look for a college that has a supportive program around you to be helpful. Michael, what did Davis try in terms of trying to find a community when he came out of rehab? Did he try any of those things, or they just weren't available, or he wasn't knowledgeable about them?
I think a little bit of all of that. The best I can remember, Missy may have a little bit more details than I do.
Did try some meetings.
There were some, yeah, he would attend meetings. Sometimes we would drive him. Other times he was driving himself. As a matter of fact, I think the night that he passed was a night that he was telling us that he was going to one of the support meetings.
And he tried.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly where that was, but yeah, there just wasn't. I'm just being honest. We didn't know stuff at the time, so there wasn't a lot of discussion around any of that. Maybe a little bit about the meeting. Hey, you do need to go to that meeting, etc. But it wasn't big organizations like this. It was meetings in little bitty buildings somewhere in a little bitty room. Definitely not a huge organization with multifaceted support network systems.
There was no aftercare.
Yeah.
And that's what we provide here is aftercare for people coming out of addiction and into recovery.
I think it's super important to understand that rehab stabilizes you. and it gives you an education, but it's not designed for long-term chronic care management. And that's really what needs to happen. Another suggestion might be to look at in your various state or location for recovery community organizations. They're out there. A lot of states have pretty well-funded programs, if you'll look to see. And all the states, except for a few, have a whole bunch of opioid abatement funds, $55 billion worth in the opioid settlement. So they're pumping that money back into some of these support services. So as we're getting to the end of our live stream, what would be one piece of advice that you could either give to mom and dad or the persons that was struggling about how to create community for themselves? What's that one good takeaway you'd like people to understand as they think about the power of community?
Educate your community, because if you don't have acceptance in your community's not going to help you. So educate your community, start a program, have a symposium. There's a lot of things. The Attorney General in the state of Georgia has gone around and talked about opioid addiction and care, and he's had symposiums all over the state. So educate your community, because if you don't have a community that understands opioid addiction, you'll never get the support in that community that you need.
You know, I'm going to add one more layer to this as kind of a final thought. I agree, the community needs to be educated for sure. But I think beyond that, today there are a lot more resources to educate yourself. So if you're that family member, you know, come to Pathroot. There are plenty of learning centers out there, or go find other ways to educate yourself so you know what your role is in providing support, and you can help be a good partner to direct someone over to community. And you may not be the right support community that your loved one wants and needs, and that's okay. Don't get your feelings hurt about it, but just educate yourself about it. So with that, the zone is doing incredible work. If y'all are in anywhere around the northern suburbs of Atlanta, go by and see the zone. They've got an incredible resale shop that I hesitate to go to because I have enough stuff, but it's like incredible resale shop.
That's our jobs training program, Carolyn, where we put people in recovery back to work and give them the confidence to get out and be competitive and re-enter society as somebody who really has skills.
Yeah, and consider donating. I know that my daughter also overdosed and died 6.5 years ago, and I think you got probably 90% of all of the overstock of clothes and shoes and all that she has. So hopefully they've been put to good use. And you know, look for organizations in your community that you can also support. So Missy and Michael, great work that you're doing. I really appreciate y'all coming on the live stream. And again, it's the Zone in Marietta. If anybody wants to stop in, easy to find them online, and go take a look at what they're up to. So with that,
Thank you,
thank you all
Carol.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.